Joining me today, we have Christy Oliva, host of the Leaving the Classroom podcast. She's also a learning program manager and a guest faculty member for IDLE courses. You probably remember her from last month when she talked about transitioning from teaching to instructional design. So today is a little bit of a follow-up to that based on some questions we had. So without further ado, Christy, I'll let you take over.
Thank you. I'm gonna get my screen started here. I would love it if everybody in the chat started to share out like where they're from. Are you a teacher? What role are you looking into? Just give me all the information while I get this set up here. Okay. All right, so I'm hoping you can see my screen.
Right now, I just see the black screen, even though it worked 5 minutes ago.
It says my screen share is loading, so that's
There
interesting.
might just be a little bit of a lag. Oh, there it is.
Okay, perfect. Sorry about that. How do I get this off? This is doing a little bit of different stuff than last time. I'm having.
We like to start every webinar with just a few tech problems to make it feel right at home.
Remember any of this happening last time, but I just have a spinning cursor now, which is really fun.
I just want to let everyone know that we tested this all 5 minutes ago and it was fine. While your cursor spins, we got some comments in the chat. People looking into content development or marketing, learning and development positions, learning services. And everybody can see your screen, but you can't.
I just can't access my presenter screen, Zoom, and so I'm kind of stuck. Let me see if this helps.
Try stopping the screen share and starting again.
No, it says Zoom is not responding.
Zoom has, someone says, try turning it off and on again. The classic tech advice.
Okay, am I back?
It looks the same. We're still in the intro
Okay.
slide. Try clicking to the next one and we'll see.
I'm just having major glitching. Okay. Okay. Sorry about that. I have everything up now. My name is Christy Oliva, and I am so excited to be here with you all. Let's get started. Yeah, woohoo, we got it started. I'm glad that didn't take too long. So, I live in Brentwood, Tennessee, with my two daughters who are 5 and 7. And before I tell you a little bit more, let me just give you the rundown on what we're covering today. So, the whole premise of today's presentation is about building a career path roadmap for yourself. So, today you're going to learn how to get clarity on your career path if you don't have it, identify your skill gaps, and define your goals based on those skill gaps. Then revise your resume and build your network and prepare for interviews. And honestly, I believe this is the order that this should all go in, because obviously you can't prepare for interviews if you don't know what career path you're going on. You shouldn't be preparing for interviews if your resume isn't the best it should be. So we're just going to go right in order and get you started. But first, let me introduce myself to people who may not know me. I am a former middle school teacher, but now I work as a program manager. And I transitioned out of the classroom about 4 years ago and have worked for 3 Fortune 10 companies and been promoted twice in that time. And I don't think this is a unique story to me. This is a little hopefully encouraging to all those teachers out there. You are highly skilled and wanted. I was a teacher for 15 years and thought it was all I was ever going to do. And it was all I ever wanted to do. I was a really good teacher and I had so much fun. As you can see from the photos, I was a middle school teacher and just had a great time with my students. But after I had kids, That all changed things. In 2018, I became a single mom, and I had an 18-month-old and was 4 months pregnant, and I was on my own. So maybe that was 2019. Sorry. In 2018, I became a single mom, but then in 2019 is when things started to change. I was making less than $40,000 a year as an online teacher, which is not sustainable. So I knew I had to do something else for my career, or I wouldn't be able to support my family. I would be dependent on others, and it just was not sustainable for me. And let's be honest, I was also being mistreated by the admin at the school where I worked. So let's dive in and get you started on your leaving the classroom journey. I'm going to pop a link in the chat so that you can download the roadmap workbook or follow along. So there it is. It should take you to a Canva share for you, and you can make a copy if you want to be able to put in text boxes and fill it in. You can print it, or you can just follow along for now, take notes, and get into this later. But we're going to be going straight down this. So the first part is to find your path. You don't need another degree necessarily. Some of you may, if you want to become a lawyer, obviously you're going to need another degree. But most of the roles that teachers transition to, you don't need another degree. You just need to find your path. When I first decided to leave the classroom and pursue another career, I thought I only had two options. And I'm sure you, if you're a former teacher or a soon-to-be former teacher, you've gone through this journey. And maybe even in other positions as well. Sometimes it can be hard to like see outside the blinders of your current career trajectory. And so if you are wanting to switch it up, it can be hard to know what to do. But I thought I only had two options: get a higher degree and become a principal, or get a higher degree and become a professor. But either way, I thought those were my only options. And so I was going to have to get a degree. Sorry, there's still a little bit of a lag here. However, you may not need to do this. The first step to figuring out what to do after teaching or any career change is to decide where you are headed. And I love this quote: find out what you like best and get someone to pay you for doing it. I know that's easier said than done. And some of you may be saying, well, I loved teaching, and that's why I got into this. So now we need to find, what parts of teaching did you excel at? What parts of non-teaching do you excel at and that you could implement and use in another way? So to help you do this, I've built two self-assessment options. The first is very high level, and you can find it at idlecourses.com/leaving the classroom. It's a free quiz and should take you only about a minute. And the second one is here in the downloadable workbook I gave you. And it's quite a bit longer and focuses more on niche skills that are job agnostic. So the first one will help you narrow down your career choices. The second one is really going to help you figure out which skills are going to be best for you to utilize. So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes here to just start on one of those. You would be able to finish the Leaving the Classroom career quiz if you go to idlecourses.com/leaving the classroom easily. The link is not working for the presentation.
For the quiz, I think.
Well, that's unfortunate. We just switched it over to, well, sorry about that. I'll have to contact my team. I apologize for that. We just switched up the link, and so obviously there's something going on there. I will get that done by the end of the day.
We can send the new link out with the webinar recording.
Okay, thank you. But in the meantime, just take a minute or two and just run your eyes over the rest of that assessment that's in the workbook that you have. And if you have time, take a minute here and just fill in a couple, get an idea of that. But I know it's several pages long, so it's going to take you a little bit of thought. And then the second part of that self-assessment is for you to poll your friends and family. And I've done this exercise myself before I transitioned out of the classroom. And it was so helpful because one of the words I heard over and over, because I didn't give people words, and that's the beauty of the second self-assessment exercise, is to see what other people see in you. And so one of the words I heard over and over from people in my life was that I have tenacity. And I knew what that was kind of, but I went and did some further research on it. And then I was lining that up with all the things in my life. And tenacity is a job agnostic skill. So if you are doing well on certain things like tenacity that I have, you can take the DISC assessment. There's all these different assessments to help you really gauge what you're great at. And those can line up directly with certain careers. So you want to compare what you got on the online assessment to the paper assessment and just see where there's overlap. Because maybe you're choosing a job that you're going to find out that the personality traits and skills that are needed are not really something you're interested in. So I really encourage you to take those and really dive into that. So this first one, I'm asking you to write your top 10 traits from the self-assessment, the paper one. And then here is where you're going to write all the words that you get from friends and family and kind of match up what you get there. And then you can add in also the career assessment that I gave you. But after you've taken the Leaving the Classroom quiz, career quiz, you'll receive an email with a list of a bunch of possible career choices for you. It's not an exhaustive list, and there are tons of other roles out there that you may qualify for. So don't let my list limit you. If it's not on there, it doesn't mean it's free. It doesn't mean it's not for you. And so then the self-assessment is skills-based, like I said, and it'll help you identify your strengths, pair everything together, and start to piece together this puzzle of where should I be? All right, so the next step is going to take some research on your part. Once you've done all that analysis of the quizzes and what you're interested in, the next step is to fill out the details of your ideal role on page 10. So you're going to look into the salary of your ideal role. You're going to look into, actually, this is your ideal role. So what's your minimum salary? This is really important to go in with because you should not be spending time and money on a career path that you're going to be making less if that's not in the cards for you. And a lot of people come to me and tell me a role that they think they already have in mind. And when I tell them that that's either going to be a lateral or a step down move, so you need to know that. So on here, put the bare minimum salary that you would leave the classroom for. Then, do you like to work in a team or solo or both? This is really just for you to put your thoughts on paper. Do you want to be remote or on site? What's the title that you're looking at? What does the job description look like? And then if you go to the current market, you're going to do some research on Glassdoor and see, is the role you're striving for matching up with that base minimum salary that you need to have? Find some companies that have that role a lot and list those out. You're just doing a bunch of research here. Okay, so then pages 11 and 12 are getting you what the current market is like for that role or several roles that you're looking for. So I'm excited for you to do that. I apologize, we don't have time to do all this together because obviously this is going to be a little bit time intensive and everybody is going to be having different roles that they're going to be going for. So it's hard to make this formulaic for you. So I'm just making it easy for you to fill in the blanks. All right, so that's the first step out of the 5 steps for your career roadmap. Next one is to develop skills. And there's no luck involved in this. You can't count on luck to get you where you need to be. So let's prepare you for this journey. It can be quite time consuming. And so it's important that you prepare yourself for that and not have false expectations for how we move forward. So now that you've identified your career path, after you do that first step, you're going to look for skill gaps to fill in before you can begin applying. So pages 14 and 15 are going to help you with current skills and skills you need to develop. And again, you can use your self-assessment for this. and the research you did about the role, and you're going to match those up and see what do I already have and what's missing. Keep an eye out for technology and certifications that are listed. I wouldn't pay as much attention to experience necessary. I got hired at roles that all said 3 to 5 years experience required. Now, the trick to that is you do need to translate your skills. You probably already have a lot of the skills. I just had to add on the technology piece for instructional design when I first transitioned out. So I had to upskill in Articulate Storyline, Beyond, Camtasia before I was able to transition. And those were gaps I saw comparing my resume to the job descriptions I was looking at. So that's what these pages are for. You're identifying your gaps. Okay, after you identify your gaps, you need to visualize your goals. And really, like, I love visualization and I love goal setting. So I'm really excited about this. It's time to do some goal setting and visualize where you want to be. I made a Canva vision board template for you. So let me give that to you. And it's what's pictured here. It just looks like it's a bunch of empty picture things, and that is exactly what it is. However, I hope that link works. I had to add in a letter. Okay, that does work. So all you're going to do is you're going to fill in these image slots with an image. And then there's tons of opportunities in Canva to add little what am I trying to say? Like little graphics and things. So let me show you what mine ended up being. And then I am printing this out and hanging it on my wall so that I don't have to cut out of magazines. I mean, really, who has magazines anymore? That's how we used to make these types of things, right? So I think this is much easier. I can find the image right there in Canva or online, put it into my vision board, and then go from there. And so then obviously I added these little graphics in here that you know, because I want to have a paid for house. I picked a house that was in my vision, and you might tailor this to just career, but I was doing it for my whole life, obviously. I picked a house that's in my area. So the not the odds. I mean, I hope the odds are in my favor, but it's perfectly possible I could end up in that exact house that I put here. So I think the more real you can make this, the better. So I have Jenna Kutcher on here because she's definitely someone that I look up to in this space. I've already achieved one of these that I put on this vision board. Is I do have a podcast that was already there, but I am now starting to offer some coaching offerings that that was on my vision board. So it's really exciting. So here's a look at what that looks like here. You can see it's just got all these individual image spaces. So spend some time and really do this and either make it your screensaver on your computer, your phone, wherever, or print it out and put it on the wall or on your fridge or wherever. I think I'm going to print it out like poster size from FedEx, but that's just me. Even if you print it out regular size, I mean, maybe I'll just print it out the regular paper size and put it all over my house. That could work too. The more often you see it, the better. My old one is right here. So when I'm working, I can see it on the side. And it really helps me narrow my focus when I'm having career doubts or just, you know, wondering what's next for me. So that's how you're going to set your vision. Now you're going to revise your resume. And sorry, I forgot to tell you that there's a bunch of resources in the workbook, I'm sure, as you scroll through about goal setting. So make sure you visit that and really go through the process of setting these goals. It's important to make SMART goals. And if you don't, you're not going to know if you ever got there. So make sure you use those materials as well. Okay, so now that we've got your skills, we've got a career path, we know where we're headed, we've set our goals so that we know what's attainable for us, it's time to revise your resume. And of course, you're upskilling. So whatever skill gaps you had, you are working on upskilling using those. So make sure that you have that in there as well. And now you need to revise your resume. Now that you know your top transferable skills, you're going to revise your resume to translate your teacher skills or wherever you're coming from to corporate friendly language. We all need a resume. Unless you are a business owner, you need a resume. And many of you are going to need a portfolio too. When I decided to leave the classroom, revising my resume was super daunting, and I put it off for the longest time. It's so time consuming and really difficult, honestly. I went through at least 5 rounds of feedback from someone who had already transitioned out. It was not fun. So I'm just prepping you for that. Sorry for the downer, but it definitely is difficult. Because especially coming from a teacher resume, which I like to call a very basic bare bones resume, because we don't need anything more to become a teacher, do we? Which is kind of laughable and sad at the same time. However, for these corporate roles, you are going to need a very bulked up resume, and you probably don't have that right now. And so you really need to do a lot of work. I mean, I hadn't even looked at my resume in a couple of years. And I didn't know how to translate my skills so that it wasn't just screaming, I'm a teacher. And that shouldn't be a bad thing to state that you're a teacher, but honestly, there is a certain reputation of teachers, not bad, but just we're belittled, we're looked down upon. And it's not because of anything we're doing, it's just the standard of society, not only in America, but I'm finding all over the world people are having issues as teachers. So we want to minimize that word teacher, not to hide that we're a teacher, but think about it as we have to show them that we are qualified, even if we don't think we are. So finally, I dusted off my resume and got to work. And it took me, like I said, multiple revisions, and I applied for a bunch of jobs, and it still wasn't great. But it is pivotal to switching careers, especially as a teacher. Your resume is most likely the hiring manager's first impression of you and your skills. So that makes it super important. It's the way you're going to translate your teacher skills into the correct terminology that applies to whatever role you're headed towards. So let's get started. Are you ready to take some notes? By the way, I do have a resume template in the featured section of my LinkedIn if you want to download that. And I have some example bullet points that you can, mess with as well. So it's on my LinkedIn, go to the featured section, download the resume template, and it looks something like this. So let's go over what the format should look like. As you can see, I have the format all done for you. Simplicity is key here. And then you just have your roles like normal. And so we'll go through what this is. And you can see here, I have an example after almost every role title that I have included on the resume. So you do get quite a few. You want your resume to be as scannable as possible, and that's why I have everything left aligned and everything really simple with one font. Maybe I have 2 different sizes of fonts, and I bold some things and I italicize some things, but even that is going pretty far. Keep it simple. Choose one font, one color, and just put the information in there. So like I said, as English speakers, our eyes start at the left-hand side of the page, and normally we do a Z pattern on a web page, but on a resume, they're just going to be going down that left-hand side and seeing what sticks out. So let's talk about how we can do that. Obviously, your basic information is going at the top, your name, your email address, your LinkedIn profile link, and if you have a portfolio, put it on there also. After that, you're going to write a profile statement. Some people prefer to do a list of highlights. I'm not mad about either one. I go with the profile statement. And this should be 3 to 4 high quality sentences that do not act as a keyword purge. And it should not be generic. I see so many generic profile statements. And if that's the first thing a hiring manager is going to read, you want to stand out. You do not want to be just like everybody else. So think about why this type of work is important to you or makes you passionate. Do you love technology and anything new? Are you passionate about accessibility or inclusivity or diversity? Talk about it in your profile statement and maybe weave in how it applies to how you're good or would be good at this new role. It should set you apart. Don't be generic. I can't say that enough. Then we're going to go to the bullets under experience, and we're going to list those in reverse chronological order. So make a list of 3 to 5 bullet points. That's what I recommend. No more than 5, because honestly, you're going to see that when you use my resume formula that I'm about to share with you, the bullets are going to be bulky because they need to be. You are telling a story with every bullet. And so if you have 5, you're going to be able to give the hiring manager and the recruiter a really good impression of what you're capable of. You do not have to list off every single thing. And that's really important to remember here because it's tempting to list everything you've ever done. But we have to think about relevancy here. Is it relevant to instructional design? Is it relevant to curriculum developer? Is it relevant to a customer success manager, right? So relevancy is very key. Okay, let's go to the next one. So let's get to my resume formula here. And you're going to use this formula for your bullet points. And you need to have 3 out of 4 of these in each of your bullet points. Okay, so there's 4 elements in my formula. You need 3 or else I say don't include it. Obviously, you can do whatever you want, but that's my recommendation and this works. Okay, so I recommend getting rid of it if you don't have 3. So keep that in mind here. You need to have all of these. And the first 3 are really easy to have. So number 1, what did you do, make, or design, and how many? So it might say something in the example like designed and developed 5 lesson outlines, or designed and developed 3 45-minute lessons. Okay, that's what you did. And it's got a number. And do not follow APA recommendations here. You are not writing an essay or a research paper. So do not spell this 5 out. Guess why? Because our eyes are going to stop at those numbers, no matter how small or big they are. The numbers are going to stand out in your resume. And so it's a way to get that eye to stop and look at what you did. Super important. Next is to add on, how long did it take you? So if you designed and developed 5 lesson outlines, well, let's call that weekly. If you're a teacher, you're at least doing this, right? Or designed and developed 3 45-minute lessons weekly, or whatever it is. But if you list how much you've done the whole time you've been there, that's going to be overwhelming and sound fake, obviously. So let's do a cadence if this bullet point was a cadence-based one. If it was a one-off, then say the complete number. Then number 3 that you have to have, how many people are affected? This gives the scope of what you've done. And honestly, it's okay if the scope wasn't big, but it's important to share because if you built or if you've been presenting or training people, but you were only training 3 people every week, that's much different than somebody who's doing 5 classes a week with 35 people. Okay. So these numbers are really, really important. And if you're a middle school teacher, you could probably write something like for 150 or more learners. And that looks good. And call them learners if you're a teacher, okay? This is part of translating that language. Then the 4th one that I think you should have, but it's not required, is to have data, results. So this may look like raising assessment scores by 15% compared to the previous year. And I have examples on my resume template of how to project results. So I did several projects where I either left the company or I was a contractor. And so I didn't get to see the results. So you can project that too and say expected to raise assessment scores by 15% compared to previous year, right? And that's okay to say. It at least shows that you're thinking about the result, which is so important for every project you work on. Okay? But if you don't have the results, you can get by with just those 3. That will make your bullet point impressive enough. But typically what I see are bullet points like collaborated with colleagues to produce 5 templates for the year. And it's just like, okay, I have no clue how many people ended up using that. Who'd you collaborate and how many? And why put collaborate? Just put that you did it. You're not taking credit for the whole thing, but you were part of it. And if they ask you to tell a story about that during the interview, then you can work in that you collaborated. This is not about other people. This is about you. Okay. And everybody collaborates, honestly. Do they do it well? That's a different story. But including words like that, or what's another one I see often? I can't think of one right now, but stay away from these general bullets that you see on everybody's resume and make it about the whole story. Tell the whole story. And like I said before, now that you have a bullet point that doesn't leave any guessing to the reader, and because recruiters spend so little on your resume, it's really important. So the hard numbers are going to eliminate the vagueness of some of these bullets, and it's going to make it really clear how productive you were and the impact you had on the company. Go through these steps for each point in your bullet point in your resume, and if you can't get at least 3 out of 4, I'm going to repeat this, get rid of it. It's going to do you more harm than good because it's going to leave a lot of guessing, and you do not want people guessing. This resume gets you in the door to the interview, and if it's too general, it never gets you in the door. So I always tell people that. I know this job market is a little different than normal right now, but still, you will get interviews if you have a good resume. You may not get past the interview stage at this point because the job market is so weird, but you know your resume is working if you're gaining interviews. So if you are applying for positions and you are not getting interviews, you need to do something about your resume. Okay. So obviously what I have up here is an average. So some people spend way more time, some people spend less, but this is kind of like their first glance. So your resume needs to have the numbers. I can't stress that enough, and it'll jump out and catch their attention. So let's move on. After your bullet points, list your education, and then you can do a keyword dump in the skills section. But I talked to a recruiter the other day who said that those skills need to also be in your resume bullets. So if you used a technology and you only have it in the skills section, they were saying that when they do a keyword search and look at the resumes that have that keyword in it, if it only has it in the technology and skills section, but doesn't have it in the bullet point of how they use that technology or skill, obviously somebody who has it up there is going to do better than you. So please make sure that you're thinking of that. And if you list a technology or a skill, put it in your resume where you used it, because you might be passed over simply because of that. And use job descriptions to help you. You might have a certain skill, but you're saying it a little bit differently than they do in that market or in that industry. So look at how they say it. Do some research. Find out. There are so many people willing to help right now on LinkedIn. Reach out to somebody in that role and just ask. The worst that could happen is nothing, or they say no. And that's not that bad. So give it a try. All right. So now you've got your skills identified, you've got your resume made, you've set your goals, your vision, you're so prepped. Well, it's time to build that network. So pages 29 through 32 of the roadmap workbook are dedicated to help you optimize your LinkedIn. First of all, I want to recommend, this is just my recommendation, this is not the view of ELB or IDLE courses or anybody else involved in this, but I recommend you take transitioning teacher off of your profile. Do not have that in your header. Why? Well, first of all, I don't see any other career pivoters doing this. I don't see former recruiter or transitioning recruiter. I just don't see that. So for some reason, transitioning teachers put this on there. And secondly, unfortunately, we talked about this before, teachers are not given nearly the credit they deserve. So it's really important to list the role you are ready to apply to instead of listing transitioning teacher anywhere on your profile. Don't put a hashtag in the posts you make, nothing. Don't make it stand out that that's what you are. We set our vision and our goals for a reason. Let's head down that path. So even though you've never been an instructional designer or a curriculum developer, the standard is that on your resume and on your LinkedIn that you put what you're striving for, not what you are. Otherwise, you're going to get contacted by recruiters for the previous role you had, which is teacher. I see so many people who come to me with this problem. They say, I optimized my LinkedIn, or they think they did. And they say that all they're getting are calls from recruiters or whoever for teaching positions. But their headline says teacher. All their roles are listed as teacher. Even their about section talks about how they love teaching or that they're a teacher. And you need to eliminate that. Take it off of your profile. So let's go through the profile checklist, and I'll show you my profile to kind of get you started. So do you have a personalized banner? They have templates in Canva for this, and yours won't look like mine because mine's more based on my podcast and my business of leaving the classroom, but you can definitely utilize this. So I have on here, go to my featured section to download my free resume template. I've got my logo so that you know that I've got a podcast. And then here I say what offerings I provide. So you can use that as kind of a template for you. Tell them to go to your featured section and put your resume there. And whatever else, your portfolio should go there, any certificates you've gotten, put it all there so that there's something to see. And so tell them to go to the featured section for your resume or your portfolio. Don't make them search for it. Do you have a professional profile picture? This should not be a selfie or anything. In fact, mine kind of is a selfie. I set up my phone on a box in my laundry room because I have a chalkboard in the back, and I knew I was taking this picture for leaving the classroom. So I wanted the chalkboard, and I just set the timer and posed and did all these different things, but it worked. My picture does not look like that. In fact, many people have said, gosh, you did that yourself? So do it yourself. You do not need to have like a professional headshot that someone else took. But you have friends and family, most likely, so you can get them to take the picture. But for me, a box and the timer on the phone worked. Have you customized your headline? Remember, this should not be about teaching, okay? I have former teacher on here because I'm trying to pull former teachers to me so I can help them. But you shouldn't put that there, okay? And one little tip is when you click on this edit button to edit your headline and your name and everything, a little trick I use is I have Christy Oliva Masters in Education all listed in my first name section. Then I list these in the subsequent sections. So that's a little trick to get more out of this headline than most people think of. So this bold stuff is just the name section. So use as much as you can. Then your headline, mine says what my goal for this year is. It says I help teachers leave the classroom. That's what I do on the side. My goal in 2024 is to help 100 teachers leave the classroom to meet my bigger goal of disrupting the education system. Yours is going to look a little different. Maybe it's going to mimic the profile statement you have in your resume. Just shorten it a little, but you've got plenty of room there. So use it up. Okay. And does the industry match your goal? This is hidden, but it's really important to find that. And because this is on the recruiter side or people who are searching on LinkedIn, that industry is going to be really important. So do not put education anymore. Put the new place you want to be so that you show up in the search history or the search page for people who are searching out to hire somebody like that. Okay. Next part. What relevant media is in your featured section? We talked about this. Put your resume, your portfolio, at least have other things. Mine, I have that I was a mentor at Idle Courses. I have my Idle Courses Academy certificate that I earned. And then I have my free resume template there. So remember that you can put documents and links there. So use it to its fullest. But people can't see more than 3 at a time. So keep that in mind also, but you can drag them to which order you want people to see. So always put priority on your resume and your portfolio. Then your about section should be like an elevator pitch. So for me, it's kind of like my intro, my background as a teacher and why I'm passionate about helping teachers. Yours, again, can be a longer version of your profile statement because you've got plenty of room in here. But write in first person, and I recommend that for your profile statement and your resume too. You're talking about yourself after all. Nobody else wrote this resume, so write it like you're telling it. And then just include some of those keywords, all the same things to think about as your resume. Okay, so that is LinkedIn. My last suggestion, I don't have this on a slide, but I definitely recommend adding people who are in the role that you want. You researched companies in step 2. So use that information to add people from those companies. Start following that company. You need to make it as obvious as possible that you're interested in that. And what's better than having the people who are there in that place you want to be, surround yourself with those people. I'm sure you've heard that phrase, you are who you communicate with or are around. The people in your life who are the closest to you influence where you are and who you will be. This applies to business and career as well. So be around the people in the space you want to be, even if it's only on LinkedIn. All right, so I believe this is the last part, is to prepare for interviews. You're ready now. So when I went to teacher interviews, they were just basically a box to check. If you're a teacher or a former teacher, you know what I'm talking about. I never went on a teaching interview I didn't get, and I really thought I was something awesome for that, but now I know it's just because I was a teacher, and most teachers get every interview they have, right? I worked in low-income schools nearly my entire teaching career, so that may have had something to do with it. But the only thing I ever got worried about was failing the background check, and I get worried about that anyway, even though I've done nothing. But I don't know if any of you do that, but sometimes I'm like, what if they find something? I don't know what it would be, but they might find something. But that was the only thing that could keep you from being a teacher. There wasn't much else that they were looking for. They just needed a butt in the seat. I know that you guys know what I'm talking about, especially these days, which makes the transition to this new interview process pretty difficult. When I began interviewing for instructional design positions in the corporate space, I was super naive. I had never interviewed for a position I didn't get. I told you that. And so when I started putting my resume out there, I really didn't know what to expect. I really thought I was just going to get all these interviews. So I started not applying at very many places because I kept thinking, oh, they'll interview me and I'll get it. And I did start to get interviews, and I went on at least 10 before I realized I wasn't making it even to the next round. I wasn't making it past the recruiter call, and I had no clue what I was doing wrong. And I had never been on a recruiter call before, so I didn't even know what I was supposed to expect with these. So let's talk about this. What you need to expect when entering into the not just instructional design, but the corporate interview process. So first of all, the timeline of the interview process is so different from teaching, right? Teaching is what? One interview? I can't remember going on multiple interviews, maybe a phone call and then they call you in for an interview and that's it. But the interview process in corporate is much different. It can still vary. So usually it takes weeks. That's pretty typical and consists of several rounds. So there's usually 3 or 4 rounds: the recruiter, a screener, a panel, and an assignment. The assignment I've only had twice, so it's not as prevalent, and it can depend on the role that you're going into. But many of the interviews I received, I didn't get the position. I wasn't used to that at all. And so I didn't know how to navigate all of this. And hopefully you get that offer at the end, right? So the recruiter call, different from all the other calls. The screener call and the panel are pretty similar, only it's one person versus a panel. And any of these can be removed. There was one where I just had these 2 and got the job. But most of them I had these 3 and some of them mixed in with an assignment. So since I was going into instructional design, usually it was, will you make a PowerPoint presentation or slide deck for an ILT, or I had to build a course in Articulate Storyline. But again, that'll depend on the position you're going for. So let's talk about the interview process. One of the big differences in the questioning process that left me feeling like I didn't know what I was doing and struggling not to say teacher and kids and things like that, the things you don't want to say in the interview to scream that you're a teacher. I didn't want to do that. I wanted the interview panel to not just see a teacher sitting in front of them, but a real asset to their team, which I am. And I found that most of the questions they were asking me were requiring me to tell about a time where I exhibited a certain skill. And I was struggling with those questions because they require you to access a different part of your brain. They're called behavioral questions, and they're really hard. So, like I said, they access a different part of your brain. And instead of giving you a hypothetical situation, like what would you do? It's asking you to, here's a question. Tell me how you would handle a difficult coworker. So that's hypothetical. So, of course, you're going to say all the right things, right? You're going to give all the right answers. Of course, you communicated well and you were kind and professional, and you're going to become best friends with that coworker. I mean, maybe not that, but I mean, you just tell the best story possible. But if you turn this into a behavioral question, tell me about a time when you had a situation with a difficult coworker and how you handled it. Your brain switches into a different mode, and your brain goes to that story. It immediately comes up with a story. It really does. And you think about that Karen at work. Sorry if anybody here is named Karen, but And there was a corrupt boss, and the situation was terrible, and nobody understood you. That's the situation that pops into your head. So you need to practice how you're going to answer that question and many others to make sure you don't let the emotions or drama of the situation leak into your answer, because that's just going to make you feel bad or come out bad. So you want to talk about the parts you handled well and the parts you learned from. So let's take a look at my interview formula. I've got a formula for you. And so first of all, you're going to use the STAR method, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with. But if not, it is situation, task, action, and result. So hopefully you've heard of this before. This is going to be the baseline, the format, the skeleton of your answer. And then using that structure, there are three main things you need to focus on that I've come to find as I've gone on so many interviews. Communication, and I've been an interviewer, communication, resourcing, and lessons learned. So no matter what, you need to include those three things as you're telling your STAR story. So for communication, you're going to be talking about who you communicated with, how you communicated with, and how often. So this is super important in almost every role. I don't know why communication wouldn't be involved in every role. So argue with me if you want, but you need to be able to communicate something at some time. And so it's really important that every situation you give, there was a communication factor involved in that, whether it be an email to somebody or I'll give you an example in a second. Hope we have time to go through the rest of this. Next is resourcing, and it's who or what did you consult to come up with the best course of action in the situation. You should never be making a unilateral decision without research or bringing in experts or other people, okay? So make sure you're mentioning that. Who did you consult with maybe? Or did you have to do some actual research either online or with articles? I mean, it depends on the situation, obviously, but you need to show that you did this. And then lessons learned, so important. And most good interviewers will ask follow-up questions to get your lessons learned. But this shows that you are coachable and that you can take feedback and that you learn from every situation and get better. So it's going to be basically just talking about anything you would do differently or what you learned to use next time. And so mention it just like that. It's okay to mention flaws. In fact, it's encouraged on interviews to mention where you messed up somewhere. Because if you just have a perfect situation, there's just no way. There's just no way. And so you need to include, and even if it did go down perfectly and without a hitch, I'm sure there was still something you realized you could have done faster or easier or whatever. Lessons learned included. So here's a teacher example for you. Describe a time when you sacrificed short-term goals for long-term success. So this question I chose because not only is it a common question asked in a lot of interviews, but especially instructional design, but it's easy for teachers to use. So an immediate example that comes to mind is you as teachers use state standards and standardized tests. I bet you have not gone a year where you've been able to teach every single state standard. Have you? I mean, it's impossible. So I bet you made some sacrifices. Look at the question. So I bet you made some sacrifices to teach as much as you could and make the long-term goal of preparing for the standardized test. I know we're not supposed to be teaching the test, but that is the goal in teaching, right? Like it's what you're measured on. So, and just end of the year scores. Maybe it's the, the formative assessments throughout the year. Now, I know you didn't teach to the tests, but you need hard data here, and this is the way you're going to get it. And the number of standards is a number. Think about numbers when you're not only talking in your interview, but in your resume as well. So in the formula, while you're talking about how many standards there were and how you had to decide which ones were key to the larger goals and which ones were secondary, you're going to include communication, resourcing, and lessons learned. For this situation, communication is probably looking something like how you documented which standards you were covering and in which weeks. Maybe you sent a weekly email or newsletter to parents, which are stakeholders, communicating which standards would be covered that week or that day. Or it could be that you had it documented in your lesson plans, but hopefully you can say both, or maybe, whatever, however you're documenting it. Resourcing is how you made the decision about which standards to focus on over the others. Was there research you or someone else did? Did you meet with your grade level team or subject matter team and make those decisions as a collaborative group? Either way, resourcing tells the interviewers how you come to your decisions. You shouldn't just be making unilateral decisions without research and consulting with your peers. And so then at the end of your answer, you get to the R and star, and you're going to share the results, but you're also going to share your lessons learned. This can be something you would do differently or something that you learned that changed how you would do something moving forward. Either way, it's good to show that you realize that, you can grow. All right. Almost done. So if you do this for each of your interview questions, I think you're going to be set. So I would write out a story for each one but you got to practice. And that's what this slide is about. Find someone who can help you. Print out a list of questions or just pull them up on your computer, but practice with someone so you can get your jitters out with someone besides the one making the hiring decision. You'll learn what works and you'll make changes before you get to the interviews. So just practice. I practiced with my neighbor when I was transitioning out, and we just met up for several sessions, and she would ask me a question. She wasn't an instructional designer, but she still could give me a lot of good tips. And I really, truly believe it did help me, get the job in the end. Okay. Whew, we made it through the 5 steps. What's next? I just loaded you up with a lot of stuff. Thankfully, you have the workbook, the roadmap to help you out. But here's a couple of steps to get you started if you are a transitioning teacher. First of all, get my free Leaving the Classroom resume template. Like I said, the link is on there if you want to copy that down, but it's also on the featured section of my LinkedIn. Subscribe to my podcast. I've got guests that are former teachers in many different roles, so you can gauge from them maybe when you're doing that research part in step 1 or 2 to help you figure out where you're headed. And then I also just have podcasts where it's just me giving you all the tips that I have for not only instructional design, but just career advice. Connect with me on LinkedIn for sure. I'm posting every day, providing as much value as I can. And if you do decide that becoming an instructional designer is something you're interested in, you can sign up for Idle Courses Academy. The next cohort starts in March, so that's exciting. And you can use my code Classroom100 for a discount. There you have it. It's time to take control and make the career change that will change your life. It definitely changed mine. So we have 5 minutes left. Does anybody have any questions about any part of the roadmap workbook or anything I shared today? I'm going to take my screen share away so I can see you.
And yeah, if you have any questions, you can put those in the chat. We will be putting all of those links that Christy shared. We'll put those in the email with the recordings, so don't stress if you missed any of them. And I think the quiz did start working.
Good.
Somebody posted a different link for the quiz.
Oh no, why is it
is the resume template working?
I think they're updating my sales page today, and so it might be messing with the rest of the site. So I do apologize for that. But thankfully, hopefully by the end of the day, they'll have it up. And in my workbook, you can see that I've got some course offerings there, one-on-one time with me that you can utilize. So let's see. I feel like I have all the skills education, but I can't seem to get interviews. So yeah, I would look at your resume first. That would be my first recommendation because that's the key to open that door to interviews. So like I said earlier, if you are not getting interviews, resume and LinkedIn profile are the first things I would look at. So use all the tips from today. Maybe you have your screaming teacher on your LinkedIn profile. So once they go look you up, they're like, I'm confused. She said she wanted to be, that she's interviewing for a customer success manager. I don't see any of that on here. Or it could be, or it's probably your resume though. If you're submitting them and you're not getting anything, they're scanning it and they're not seeing what they want. So I think everything you heard today is going to help you with that. But most likely, if you're a teacher, those bullet points are really pulling you down. And I said it at one time, but I'm going to say it again. That is the hardest thing you will do. Besides like waiting to hear back from interviews and stuff, your resume is going to be one of the most time consuming things you're going to do. So I'm just going to put that on the table for you. I apologize for that. There's nothing I can do about that besides provide you with the template and the formula, but it is what it is. It's going to take you time, and find somebody who will give you feedback, whether it be someone who's currently in that role who, is offering that, or just ask them, you never know. Or find somebody who is offering that service of resume coaching. I offer that service. So, but that's definitely where you should start. And like I said, just keep gauging the traction you're getting. I'd have to do some research to see like what the typical is right now in this job market, because it is so weird, like I said, but I would think that you should be getting calls several times a week if your resume is the way it should be. Yes, you're right, Joe. It is all about rewording stuff. You've got all the skills, so many of the skills. Again, maybe not the tech and maybe not a couple of other things, but you've got it. So you've just got to translate it. So changing things like parents to stakeholders, kids to learners, all that stuff is going to help you. You're not hiding anything. You're just translating. Think about it. If I were to talk to you this whole session in Spanish, some of you may be able to keep up a little bit or all the way, but you're not going to see what I'm saying because it's not in the right language. Corporate has its own language and teaching has its own language. So all you're doing is translating it. So the course, if you click on the link in there, I've got several different packages. It's not an asynchronous course. I've got like a career kit that you can buy, and then I have one-on-one sessions that you can add on to that for packages, or you can just buy the career kit. But the career kit is $79 and comes with six or seven things similar to what I presented today. This isn't in there. You got that for free. And Lauren, you can get graphic design so easily. Take some LinkedIn learning courses. There's Coursera courses for that. Play in Canva. You don't even have to have Adobe Photoshop or any of that to get graphic design skills. But the key to many of these roles, and if you're building a skill, is to make sure you're getting feedback from somebody who knows. So like Lauren, if you're wanting to gain that graphic design skill and you make a bunch of stuff in Canva, have somebody tell you what they think about it. And there are graphic design rules. So if they say it's not good and you think it is, you're probably wrong. So take the feedback, implement it. It's a huge part of the corporate world is feedback. What are they looking for? To bring out ability to lead when I don't currently have a team. So Brian, you could choose to start mentoring people who aren't on your team, outsiders. Like I definitely have become a leader right now. I've got this podcast. I'm becoming a presence on LinkedIn. So even though I've never had a team underneath me, I can translate what I've done. So it's the same thing. You're going to translate things you've done, where if you've been a mentor and if you haven't, find somebody, start a small group of people who, I mean, there's so many ways to gain that experience without having a team at work that you're responsible for. All right, we are at time. Are there any other questions? Otherwise, find me on LinkedIn. I'm very responsive on LinkedIn. And yes, Edie, you are correct. You lead every day when you influence others around you. So it's all about just putting that in a bullet point. And you're a leader on your work team too. Again, even if you don't have people underneath you, find somebody who you can mentor at work. asked to lead a team meeting, things like that that you can start putting on your resume or be able to talk about in an interview are really, really important. So glad you all guys all came today, though. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christy, for joining us and sharing this information. Thank you, everyone who joined us. As we said, this was recorded, so we'll send out an email with the recording and with all of these links, and definitely connect with Christy on LinkedIn. And hopefully we'll see you all on another webinar soon. Have a great rest of your day.